Welcome back to Not a Straight Line with me, Pete Daly-Dickson. This is the show that explores the non-linear journeys of artists and entrepreneurs to inspire you as you zigzag through your own non-straight line life. And this week, I'm joined by the other half of Ignite Your Offer, Cristina Castro. You may remember my conversation with Angela Tai a few weeks ago. Well, Cristina's path has similarities. An expat from Australia to Spain and then around the world, Cristina's successful corporate journey was disrupted by a realization about the potential for entrepreneurship. After some family experiences that caused a zag or two, Cristina has found herself thriving in chaos where others can't and demonstrating an innate ability for culture, change, and management in business. All of these skills have led her to a fruitful, happy life in Ignite Your Offer with Angela, with her family as her strong foundation. Cristina also has a passion to see change in our education system, which she shares with me in this conversation. She's an amazing human being, incredible amount of energy, and I was delighted to bring her onto the show. So let's get this episode going. The first thing that I do in a conversation is just a little exercise just to create a space for the three of us that are in this conversation. So there's you, Chris, there's me, and there's the listener as well. And how we do that is with an exercise called the physiological sigh. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So physiological sigh is 2 deep breaths in through the nose, held for a second, and then out through the mouth.
Okay.
The three of us, we're going to close our eyes, and we're just going to do that 3 times, and then we'll jump off the deep end into the conversation. So breathe in.
How nice is just breathing?
Breath, the breath of life. Without breath, we're dead.
Yeah.
But we're not dead now. We're fully alive. Cristina, we are in your non-straight line journey exploration. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Been looking forward to this for months, as you know.
Yeah. We did have it scheduled a while ago. We'll probably get into that at some point in the conversation. I had the immense good fortune and pleasure of having a non-straight line journey conversation with your business partner, Angela, a week or so ago. So it'd be good to get your side of the story, your interpretation of the events. No, we didn't talk about far more about her than about the business, as you'll find out as we go. So that first question, when you read it, was there anything that came to mind immediately for you?
I know that there's something I feel has always made me different. And I think that's the thing. It's that case of that splitting line of that, what's that movie? Crossroads or turning doors or sliding doors.
Sliding doors, yeah.
So I do feel there was a sliding door moment very, very early on in my life that has really created the Cristina you know.
Okay. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So you also grew up in different countries, and and that's probably it for me. The moment when I turned 7, we moved our whole life, everything. I remember everything going into a really, really, really big wooden box that was being shipped across the sea to Spain from Australia. And that really changed everything for me because I had been to Spain before, but as a kid, as a holiday, and this time it was for good. This was it. This was the move. And I was really excited. I remember my sister was terrified. We didn't speak hardly any Spanish. And it was I think it was a turning point for all of us.
Why Spain?
So my dad and mum are Spanish, and they just wanted us to grow up around the family. My grandma was already in her 90s, and my dad wanted to give it a go. I think he wanted to see what it was like to bring up his kids in Europe, in Australia. In Australia, in Europe, in Spain, in his home his hometown, his home area, closer to family. So mum saw it as a really good education opportunity for us. She came under the false expectations that it would be 2 years in Spain, 2 years potentially in the Philippines, so we could know both cultures, because my mum is half. But it wasn't. It was Spain. Like, we pretty much stayed here for quite a number of years.
Okay, so how come they were in Australia then?
They met in Australia. So my dad moved to Australia in his 20s. So we're talking, by the time we moved here, he was 55, 56. No, 57, 58. And he moved in his early 20s to Australia. So he'd been living in Australia for nearly 40 years before coming back here. Yeah.
That's really a significant change. I mean, it's practically almost a foreign country for them. I mean, I know you come back for holidays, but from a cultural perspective, that's almost like starting anew.
With hindsight, yeah. And with a certain level of maturity, yeah, you would say that. My dad didn't necessarily have that side of insight, or his ego was, I'm coming home, and therefore I know what home looks like. And I think there are a lot of migrants that still believe they know what home was like, even though they might have been out of the country 30, 40 years. I know my brother-in-law, who is English, often talks to me like he knows of the England that I live in versus the England he left 30 years ago. So because he's still got contacts and family and things like that, he's discussing and talking to them on a regular basis, but it's very different to living in that country. So it is knowing, if you know yourself, yeah, absolutely. You're restarting, you're starting from scratch, and what you know is no longer the case. But I think my dad came with a certain innocence that he was coming back home and he knew what he was coming back to.
Mm. So, I mean, immediately I'm making connections with the conversation with Angela, and she moved to Australia when she was 6, and you moved out of Australia when you were 7. So it's kind of, well, how did you two meet to be such good friends? But we'll come on to that, I'm sure. You mentioned that your sister was terrified. Do you have any other siblings?
No, just her.
Is she older or younger?
Younger.
Okay. Well, let's focus on you. Why was there such a sense of excitement for you? Because I think will give us an insight into Cristina, I think.
I have come to really discover that I love chaos. I find new opportunities in the chaos. I find things that I haven't seen before. One of the things, and you would know this about me, is I always say to people, look for your black swans. And looking for black swans is something, that idea intrigues me. It excites me. It makes me really passionate about discovering new things. I think that's the constant learner in me. But what I like about the whole black swan concept, for those that don't know, is when someone was traveling, I think, through South America, and always had seen white swans and saw for the first time a black swan. And it was like something simple and plain-sighted, and something that's so obvious that, of course, why should all swans just be white when there could be of other colors? It's that living in plain sight. It's so obvious to those that know, but for those that haven't seen it or experienced for the first time, it's just such a new revelation, and it's such an awakening of how little do I really know of what I think I know. And so for me, that's what it was. It was an opportunity to connect with my cousins and learn a new culture. And I took it on as not a challenge, but I took it on really with a lot of excitement. I was also very blessed to have an amazing teacher that was really supportive and really patient with me. And I think that sense of curiosity, plus the people I had surrounding me that were really encouraging and really supportive, made that whole journey very different to, I think, my sister's point of view. To give you an idea of our different perspectives, is I remember when I was 4 or 5, I said to my sister, I had a fight with my mum over something, just as a 4-year-old, I don't even remember what that was. She didn't give me chocolate, whatever it might have been. And I said to her, that's it, Mum, we're moving. And she's like, okay. And then she's like, I was packing a bag, and I said, I'm taking my sister with me. Like, okay. And my sister and I are like packing. My sister says to me, where are we going to go? And I was like, oh, don't worry about that. We've got plenty of uncles and aunties. Like, we've got plenty of houses to go to. You don't have to worry about that. And so I was packing. I was like, Mum, we're leaving. And she's like, okay, where are you going? I'm like, we're going to go for a walk first around the neighborhood. And I was so okay about not knowing what was next or what it looked like, because I felt so secure, one, in my upbringing with my family. I've always been in a very comfortable and very secure upbringing, in the sense that I was very cared for always, so therefore there was not much I could go wrong. And when you've got that sense of security just from your own family, and that I think carried on with me, throughout my life, including my trip to Spain, because Dad was coming home. So in my case, in my mind, I was like, well, I'm coming home as well. So why Why would this be a problem? And that's always led me to know that no matter what gets thrown at me, I'm like a cat. I land on my feet and I'll find the next path.
Mm. You described right at the beginning that moving to Spain was a sliding doors moment for you. Why was that? I mean, yes, you made a change of geography and whatever, but you described it and you set it up as that it was that event that really formed the Cristina that we know today. That's quite a profound statement to make. Why do you suppose that was?
I think it's where my confidence in myself was really tested, right? Because if you look at the other side of the coin, my sister, her confidence wasn't set in this piece. She built, I believe, her confidence a lot later on in life, but mine was really cemented at that point in time. It was no matter what the situation was, that I would not just survive, I would thrive. And that really became apparent. I moved to a new city, a new town. I did have, like I said, cousins and family members that I'd seen, regularly through holidays every couple of years. But within the school environment, I was up to speed with the rest of the kids in my classroom within 3 months. I was doing the same exams, the same homework, and getting A, Bs, and Cs.
In a foreign language, or had you spoken Spanish back in Australia? No. So you learned Spanish as well in that time?
Yeah, I'd learned Spanish.
Wow.
I mean, I had growing up from a Spanish background, so you did learn a bit, you did do a couple of school, but the same way you would have learned a foreign language in any other school, you'd know enough to be able to ask for a pizza or whatever it might be, or an ice cream at that point in time, but not necessarily to really survive in a normal environment. I became fully bilingual, I think, at that point in time. I spoke English as well as any other 7-year-old would, and Spanish the same as any other 7-year-old would. So it was the moment that I realized that we're much more moldable and we're much more, I guess I was a kid at that time, but that carried on with me to much more of the adulthood. And I think the risks that I then take and the way that I just jump 2 feet in a lot of things, and Ange can tell you that, I just jump in going, this will work, because it's going to work. I'm going to make it work, because it's just, why wouldn't it work? It's always worked.
It's a powerful mindset to have formed in you at such a young age.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so telling to then the moves I did afterwards, I think came from that. If I hadn't had that experience at a 7-year-old, I don't think I would have made the decisions or done the things that I did later on in life.
Yeah, thanks for opening that loop. Those loops, we'll come into those. Well, the question I wanted to go to is that, we've looked at the plus side of how that mindset has helped you kind of thriving in chaos. Is there any times in your life that you look back on where perhaps it hasn't served you so well?
I think I'm too much of an optimist to realize that and accept that. That's just being honest.
But that in itself is a lesson, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure it's landed me in hot water. I've definitely...
Okay, so when you say you're sure that it has, can you think of any times when it has?
Oh, yeah. When I bought property, investment properties, and then it's all gone under, literally under, because there was a massive flood in Brisbane that my property went from 2 or 3 million to 1. And I was like, I've got a $2 or $3 million mortgage, so that's not really helpful. So yes, it has, I'm sure.
Wow.
But at the same time, even now, even looking at that and when that all happened, I just went, it's money. If I had 2 or 3 million, I'll make it again. And I remember saying to myself, I'm in my 20s. I've got plenty of time to make up for this money. So it is that constant optimism in me that I think is just being able to shake off chaotic moments, shake off the pandemic, shake off things like that really throw us into chaos. Is that the case moving forward? I don't know. Being a mum now, I think differently sometimes of those things, because when I think of the chaos my daughter may be in the future, that scares me probably more than the chaos I could face, because I know what my personality is and how it'll handle it. I don't know hers yet. I know hers is still forming. So it's going to mature. I think, me in 50, at 50 may be a very different me to today.
Yeah. Do you think that mindset or that sense of optimism is necessary, important, optional? Can it be taught? Can if you're somebody who tends to see the less optimistic side of things, or glass half empty kind of mindset,
It's a question I've actually asked myself a lot, because it's a question that I have seen that not everyone has. Friends around me, people around me that I really care about and love, and they've said to me, "But you're always so happy, and I'm not." And I've got friends with depression and a few things along those lines, and I struggle to really get myself in their heads. And I've read a lot about this, and I don't know what the answer is 100%. I know that part chemical in us, that we are potentially born a particular way, potentially formed a particular way. I know the optimistic side of me has made my life a lot easier, I think, in comparison to others.
What makes you say that?
Because I see the glass half full. I don't see the glass half empty. So that positivity, that optimism makes me look for options around that, look for alternatives, look at different points of view without maybe fear. Whereas I think when you're looking at it, and often when we come to things from a scarcity perspective, it is harder for us to see the alternative. It's harder for us to see that black swan that might be just outside our window, that we just cannot even imagine is a possibility. I think it makes it a little bit harder. Tunnel vision comes into play a lot more when we're in a scarcity or fear mentality, I believe. And I have been in it, but I do shake myself out of it quickly, because it doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel like I'm in my skin, if that's the thinking I've got.
So what caused you to go there most recently? Can you remember?
I think the business tests that quite a lot in all of us. When you start up a business, you jump in, and then
You're optimistic about what you're going to do with it, of course.
oh, of course, yes. I think all entrepreneurs are, otherwise we wouldn't do it.
But
But
capital
reality,
B, capital U, capital T.
yeah. And reality does kick in after some time, and you optimistic about the forecast that you put, and you're like, I'm going to make 20 clients, and then you might not hit that 20 clients, and then the cash flow that you were counting on for 20 clients doesn't come in. So absolutely, it definitely happens on a regular basis. I don't think that's not tested regularly. And I go through ups and downs all the time when it comes to what we think it's going to be. And I think also our way of being in relation to the business. We never want someone to not work with us because of money. And therefore, we often, and well or not, we'll delay payments, we'll delay things along those lines. And then we're like, oh, wait, hold on. How are we paying our bills now? But we have that trust, one in each other and one in the business and what we do, and what we are going to give our clients, that we're okay with that. But it does test us at times. It does test us, like, we're putting some major investment into the business right now, major investment through about 5 or 6 different angles. We're getting, we're pulling out cash. And you're aware of a couple of those.
Yeah, what are those? Because the listener may well be an entrepreneur, and they may well like to know, where are you investing in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're absolutely in a scale up phase of the business. We know we're at a business that is easily should be making 10,000 K a month, easily. Ange and I believe it should be probably 20. Just based on where we're at from an offer perspective, from a stability perspective, from even a mindset perspective of ourselves. And we know that's not just quite hitting where it should be. So where the business is, from a maturity level perspective, we are 6-7 years into the business now, versus where the cash flow should be coming in through. And therefore, whilst we've not, in the last couple of years, beautiful to say, we've been able to pay ourselves every month, regardless of whatever happens. That's a really beautiful position to be in. But we haven't been able to invest heavily in the business from the business itself. And so we really want to. So we've just taken on a new coach in relation to getting out of our heads in relation to marketing, and just about to launch a book. So she's got a book coach around that as well. And then, as you know, we're looking at doing a podcast series with you. So we're really excited about that. And so there's investment in the mics, as you know, and the equipment. And I've just upgraded the computer. I'm just about to upgrade a computer. So it's investments in the business that need certain cash flow injections that don't happen all the time, but happen every so often. The last time we did probably this $20,000, $30,000 investment, it was years ago, when we still had reliance on corporate. I was still in the corporate and still had quite a bit of cash that she was still investing back into the business at that point in time. Big savings we had. And therefore, it didn't feel as bad because we were dipping into the savings. Now we've chosen not to touch any more savings. We're at the point in the business where savings are our savings. And business is business, and the business is invested in its own business. And that's where we're at. And we are also trying to do this without getting any loans because I hate getting loans out for the business. I've become that person that is like, how does a business fund itself? Pre-plan it, pre-think it. It's an investment, but at the same time, without going into debt. And is it possible? And I do believe it is. It's just being very savvy on money management, knowing your numbers, knowing what the return is, being realistic, being really, having cash flow forecasting. That's where everything we do is based on the numbers. When we sit down once a fortnight and we look at our sales plan, we look at what does that mean in relation to cash flow? What is really coming in, and what would we like it to come in, and what difference would that make, and where is that? Where is the buffer? Where is all of this coming?
Some great insights and lessons there for anyone that has the ears to listen. That's wonderful. So in that little tangent there that we had, you talked about corporate. So you've been in corporate. What was the journey to the beginning of your corporate career?
The beginning, so I started working very early. I got my parents to sign off contracts. I think I was 17 to do door-to-door sales knocking, like knocking to sell door-to-door.
Okay, hang on a second. You can't just say that and expect to move on, because for most people on this planet, the idea of going on knocking on people's doors to sell door-to-door would be like up there with public speaking and maybe even death, But you chose to do that.
I chose to do that. It was my first real job.
Okay, where did the idea come from? Did you know that kind of job existed? Where did you see it? How did you know that it was for you? Why did you want to do it?
So I wanted to work, right? I wanted to work. My friends had all started either going to McDonald's or Macca's if you're in Australia, and was working at a chicken shop, at a butcher kitchen chicken shop. I remember that. So this is how far back we go, right? And, the fruit shop or their parents' takeaway fish and chips or whatever it may be. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, my family have had restaurants, and I've happily, been a waitress and done things like that. One, to get cash, but also to help, because I was proud of the restaurant my godfather ran. But I didn't want to work as that. I didn't want that for my first job. That was just not my first job. So I actually applied. I sat there and I prepared my CV and I applied for jobs. And this was one of those jobs that didn't require any experience.
It's commission only, I guess.
Yeah. And it started out, it looked so good in the ad, marketing, learn marketing, customer service, and build yourself a team quickly and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, this is me. That's what I'm going to do. And went for the interview and I got it straight away. And I was like, look, Mom, I've got the job. So that's how I started. I wanted to put a suit on, and that was my ability to put a suit on, as a 17-year-old. And then, the reality is you put a suit on, but then you're walking the street day in and day night, rain, hail, or shine. So that was my first job.
What were you selling?
Initially, I was selling phone lines, and then I got moved into selling security systems.
And how did you do? Were you good?
I was good at the phone line selling, and that's why I moved into security systems. And then I hated selling security systems because I was studying marketing at the time. I was doing my degree in marketing and communications, and it made me question everything about marketing because I was trying to sell security systems. And so they tell you, okay, so anyone that knows anything about marketing, you find the pain, you find the circumstances, and you basically attack that pain, right? And you sell to that pain.
Scratch the itch.
Exactly. So the areas that they were sending us to were more so elderly people, and you were attacking the pain of potentially being robbed. I couldn't do that to elderly people. I couldn't sit there and go, do you realize that there was a robbery down the street and you don't have a dog and you don't have this and you don't have a security system? I could not do that to people. I could not sell them I can't remember what it was. I do remember what it was. $1,670 security system that then they had to then pay an ongoing monthly fee to be connected to ADT. And they were like, let's come up with campaigns. And I just couldn't. I was like,
why not?
Because you're playing on a fear that is a reality. But I just, to sell well, you really had to make them really feel scared, right? To be able to go, yes, I will buy this from you today. I didn't want to make someone feel scared. And if they had come up with the angle of sleep better because you're protected, that would have been a very different story for me. Because when I bought my security system here at home, when my dad was going through Alzheimer's, I bought it because he was not sleeping at night. He was very paranoid that we were going to be attacked in the night. And I said to him, Dad, let's put a security system. That way, if anything goes wrong, we've got a button and you can sleep better. He started sleeping better the next day we had that installed. If that was the campaign that these people were using to sell security, that feeling of safety, that feeling that you're home and you're protected in your own home, versus the fear selling of you're going to be robbed, and if you don't have this, you're going to be the one that's targeted. That just doesn't work for me.
So it seems that at quite a young age, you were forming and had very clear views and values and a sense of the world and how you were going to play in it. Would that be fair?
I guess so. It made me question my whole degree and put it on pause for a long time. But yeah, I did.
Okay.
I just can remember saying, if this is what advertising, because I really wanted to go down advertising at that point, if this is what advertising campaigns are, I don't want anything to do with it. And I remember saying, no, it felt wrong. It just felt, I've always had this inner gut feeling, and Maurice, well, I believe he's also been on your podcast. That intuition feeling, that gut feeling has always been very strong. And my family have always been very open about saying, trust it, listen to it. It is another part of your brain. It is another part of the universe giving you advice. So don't ignore it. And so they've always been very open about that. There is another part of you that you don't necessarily understand, but is there. And so I was, the moment that gut feeling was not right, I walked away from it.
Well, I was going to ask if you saw that model, and I guess you did, in the fact that your parents moved from Australia to Spain. Do you think that was an entirely intuitive decision on their part, or perhaps a more hopeful one?
Yeah, I think it was purely romantic. My parents were very romantic. I think it was purely a romantic idea in their mind of what your life in Europe would be like, raising kids in Europe would be like. I remember my mum telling me at the time, before we went, she said, you're not going to only learn about history, you're going to live history. And you're going to be able to go to Rome and do this and that. And so it was purely romantic.
So you did well at selling phone lines, not so well at selling security systems. And you were doing this while you were studying for a degree, which you said you put on hold as a result of your experience of selling security systems. That was your first taste in selling, though.
Yeah.
How did the function, the form of selling fit with Cristina Castro at that age?
Yeah, I think that has always come to me really easily. I think telling a story, convincing someone of something was always something that came to me easy. And that's probably why I knew I'd go into selling straight away. And for me, I think because I've always seen selling as problem solving. It's how do you solve a problem, and do you have the right need to help solve that problem of that person? You identify it and solve it. So selling, it's interesting because I know the term is selling, and I know we use the term selling, but for me, it's just not selling. It's 100% problem solving. Either you're a good problem solver, i.e. good at selling, or you're a terrible problem solver, not good at selling. And that's just, I know it's a simplistic view, but that's just how I've always seen selling.
Sometimes it's a simple view that gives us the insight that we need to actually succeed at something. I've never heard selling described as that, but it totally resonates with me. I hope it resonates with the listener too, because entrepreneurs, business owners, they often set up in business because they're very good at doing a certain thing. They're not necessarily so good at marketing that thing or selling that thing. But maybe if they just change, well, like Dr. Wayne Dyer says, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. They're actually changing it from a view of, I'm selling this thing to that person. I'm helping this person solve a problem. Wow, that's pretty profound.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If you can help them, why wouldn't you help them? Just sounds crazy. If in that process of helping them, there is an exchange of money to be able to value that exchange, then so be it. If the exchange is not money and it's something else, and you're okay with that, then that's okay too. So, why not?
We just touched on briefly we started that bit of the conversation and talking about your entry into corporate life. So you've put your degree on hold. How old are you now? 18, 19, something like that?
Yeah. 18, yes. No, before that, I hadn't turned 18 yet because I started really early. Like 16 and 9 months, you can start working. So I was literally had just turned 17 or was about to turn 17. So I think I was still 17 when I started. Then I switched. No, 17, 18, around about that time. Yeah.
So what did you do next then? If you know you didn't want to sell security, what did you do and why?
I had already experience at this point in time, right? Like I had experience, I had references, I had people that had said she's really good at what she does and what she puts her mind to. So I was able to apply then for customer service roles. And so I did. I applied to work in the big city of Sydney, put a suit on again, catch the train up to Sydney and work in customer service. And then I went into a health fund. I really wanted to do something that I thought was more socially gratifying. And so I went into to work for a health fund, thinking that was going to be a lot better for the soul.
Absolutely. But customer service isn't sales though. So did you just think that you wanted more varied experience or that you had enough of sales or?
I wanted to add to, so I'm very strategic sometimes, my way of thinking. I wanted to add to CV. I've got sales, I tick that box. Customer service and customer service representative was probably the next thing that I thought looked glamorous enough on my CV that I could achieve, say yes to, and scale, move up the corporate ladder.
And was that something that you, at that point, set your sights on? You wanted to scale the corporate ladder?
100%.
Where did you want to get to?
The top.
CEO.
The CEO. I had a very clear mindset at that age, and up until probably a few years ago, that I wanted to be in corporate. I did not want to be an entrepreneur. I wanted nothing to do with entrepreneurship. My parents had been entrepreneurs, failed miserably in the process, maybe because of their romantic mindsets. But
when you say failed, though, I mean that's one of the themes of this podcast is success and failure. What is it? What is that? What do those words actually mean? So when you say they failed miserably, what do you actually mean?
So my dad did really well in Australia, made lots of money, but more so as an employee than he did as a business owner. He was too trusting of other people and too trusting of people telling him they'll do one thing and then not following through necessarily with everything. He believed in his word. So whatever he said he would do, and he just believed everyone was the same as what he would be like. And that naivety in business and that everyone is like you made that he made some really silly partnerships. Interesting that I'm in a partnership now, but some silly partnerships with people that just took advantage of his real natural ability to build. He was a house builder, very good with his hands, just amazing with his hands. Like we talked about the house earlier, you and I, but the house that I live in now, he built, and it is really, really solidly built, really well built. And he had certain flair for like roofs and things like that and woodwork. So he was very, very good worker, not a very, very good entrepreneur, investor, people management, business management, number management.
Okay. Does that mean that the business went under? They lost money or?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, we never, I think, lost a lot of money. I think he struggled. I saw him struggle. I saw him put a lot of hours, a lot of investment, a lot of headaches into building a business that didn't pay off for him in the same way it paid off for other people that he'd worked alongside. So I think it's the sacrifices he made physically and emotionally and time-wise that didn't pay off for him. And therefore, I would say, why look for your own paycheck when you can get it from someone else and someone else can carry that headache, right? And that was my mentality growing up, is like, I saw my parents struggle and I went, they work really hard. My parents have never been ones to shy away from working, and working was something they did with pride, and they've always inculcated that, working is not something to frown upon. It's something that you should be grateful for. You have the ability and the resources to work. So that I was okay with. The fact that you didn't then bring home the bacon because you worked so hard, I really struggled with, when I knew there was an easier way to potentially work or make money.
So why did you stop being in corporate then, if it was such an easy life?
That's Angie's fault. That's where you
well, firstly, was it an easy life?
It was. I did well in corporate. By the age of 22, I was promoted into a state management role. a general management role. And so I worked hard. I never, like I said, the concept of work was never a problem for me. But I did well. I played the political game when I needed to play. I believe I'm intelligent enough to deal with issues as they come up. I don't see problems as problems. I see them as ways of finding new solutions. And that in the corporate setting, I think plays well. You know, when you're a hard worker and you're prepared to just be optimistic and solve problems, you get promoted. And so I got promoted. I got promoted one and again and again and again. And I lived a very good life. I had a great pay and I had a great lifestyle and I traveled business class whenever I wanted to go particular places and had points from traveling from work. So I think I did really well in the corporate space. I'm very comfortable and very proud of the corporate.
And did you stay in that health space and in Spain?
No. So I was in Australia by this point. So this is where I've missed some of the jumps. So whilst I went to Spain when I was 7, when I was 15, I used to have to go every year to a summer camp to make sure that I didn't forget my English. My parents were very insistent that, you know, you're bilingual, you need to make the most of this, is going to become very useful for you in the future. So we would go every summer to a summer camp where I realized half the teachers spoke worse English than I did, because mind you, this is from a Spanish summer camp in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, this is not it. Like, I'm not doing this. And I said to my parents, can I go back to Australia instead of going to a summer camp this year? And my mum was like, you want to go to Australia? And I was like, I'll promise I'll go to school. I was a good student. So therefore, you know, my parents were never worried about me not doing well at school because I was always a good student. I'd come home crying if I got anything less than a B. So they weren't worried about that. I convinced my parents and I said, look, if you give me a budget to live on for 3 months over the summer, I will live within that budget. I will learn how to budget myself. And I will go live with grandma and spend some quality time with grandma over the summer. And I'll go to school every day. It won't cost you anything because I'm Australian. So therefore I can enroll into an Australian school without any costs or anything like that. It's part of the government. And I will learn English. I will practice my English and I'll be, you know, at the same, and I, you know me, I was like, I'll be at the same level as most other Australians because I could do that in Spain. I can do it in Australia.
You're just in sales mode, just natural sales mode.
And my parents looked at it and they went, we'll actually save us money by doing that because she'll be with grandma. And yeah, we can send her a budget, but you know, grandma will probably spend most of the things and she'll build up family, you know, things and it'll be a good experience for her. So off I went, jumped on a plane, went over to Australia. That's where I met Ange in high school. So during this student exchange, and you know, I met Ange and we became friends. Came back to Spain. My parents got divorced, and literally 6 months later, I was back in Australia. So 16, 17, 18, I was already living in Australia.
And what did you see in Ange that made you connect? Do you think what did you see in each other? Do you think?
So I remember it was my first day of school in high school. Okay, as an exchange student from Spain, and this is the 90s. Okay, remember we're still in the 90s. We haven't even reached the noughties at this point. And we went into, funnily enough, it was business studies. Our first encounter was business studies. And Mrs. Douglas, I came into the room and she said, we've got a new student coming in from Spain. Please make her feel welcome. Yes, you do. And there was a spare desk next to Ange and she said, come and sit with me. And that was it. We'd been friends since that moment onwards.
Wow.
We should tell Mrs. Douglas we're now in business together. She'd be very
yeah. Yeah, you should. And I love the irony there, the synchronicity. I don't know that you met studying business and now you're in business together. That's great. That kind of full circle. So that was a jump back to 15 because I asked a question about whether you stayed in health and Australia. So
yes.
So why did you move back to Australia then permanently?
So when my parents got divorced, my mum was in Australia. And because I'd already had built myself a life there over that period of time, I was 15 on my own. I knew my mum was struggling. I was like, I'm going to go and be there with her, support her through this process. I also wasn't very happy with what my dad had done through that process. And so therefore I was like, leaving you, going to mum. And I knew that mum didn't have to look after me, being a 15-year-old or 16-year-old at that point in time in Australia, because I had my life set. I had my routine. I had my friends. So I was able to look after her in many ways. I was able to help her resettle back into Australia and re-find herself as a person, as a life, and go through what a divorce does to anybody. And so I went there to look after her, but also because I knew it wasn't a struggle for me. And I kind of saw really quickly that the options I had in Spain as a teenager at that point in time, and where my studies would lead me to in Spain versus Australia, was actually better for me in Australia. So the education system was more practical. Spanish system was still, I needed to learn Latin, and I was like, why do I need to learn Latin? And why do you ask me to learn, things like the European mountain ranges and rivers, and where the river ends, and these things that I was like, that's nice, and I'm glad I know some geography, but why? And when I was in the Australian system and I was in business studies, it was very practical. It was things like understanding tax returns, and it was things like how to write a business plan and how to apply for investment. I remember I had to do an assignment about applying for investment and what investment looked like. I felt the practicality of the education system at the time in Australia was going to serve me a lot better and was more aligned to my sense of being as a child than the Spanish system was. And therefore, if I had a choice to pick, in this case I did, I was like, I'm going to go for one, which seemed simpler, but also more practical to me at that point in time.
And what about your sister, out of interest?
She followed me 6 or 7 months later. So she stayed with Dad for a little while longer and then followed, because she was obviously younger than I was. And I think both Mum and Dad saw the need for her to go through teenage years alongside Mum, learning about, being a woman and all of those kind of things. And I think she missed us. We're close as a family. Even now, we're still quite close. So yeah, I begged her to come. My mum begged her to come. Dad thought, yeah, it's probably the right thing. I don't know if I can bring up a teenager on my own. So
You mentioned earlier that your dad had Alzheimer's. Did he pass on from that?
no, he's still with us. He's still strong. He's one of those people that's in the nursing home who is probably the strongest physically and the best in health. Just not there with the conversations. He's not able to have a conversation. He's very at ease there. But I think he'll be, so my dad's side of the family is they live for a very long time. My grandma lived till she was 99. I've got an uncle right now who is 100, who lives completely on his own and is absolutely fine. He's got 2 walking sticks, but he's 100, so
yeah, we'll give him a pass.
Yeah.
We'll give him a pass on that.
It's all right.
But how do you feel when you go and visit your dad, and does he recognize you? Does he know who you are? How is that for you?
So I had experienced Alzheimer's with my mum. Remarried when I was younger. She remarried, and my nonna, my new grandmother, also got Alzheimer's. She got Alzheimer's in her 60s and 70s and lived for 10 years with Alzheimer's. So I recognize and I have experienced the evolution of that disease, of that illness. And so when Dad got it, I was the first to recognize it. And I was the first to identify it, and many a fight with my family because they were not prepared to admit that he had Alzheimer's. Now, I think I'm very okay with it because it's not something he's chosen to have. It's something that's happened to him. And whilst he doesn't know who he is even anymore, he doesn't know who his name is, he can't recognize a picture of himself, he can't recognize himself in the mirror, yet alone anything else. He still is a person. And so therefore, I go visit the shell of my dad. I still am able to hold him. I'm still able to talk to him, even though he can't respond. So, we talked about rescheduling this podcast because my godfather had passed away, who was very much like a father figure to me. I no longer have him physically here. Dad is not, he's physically here. Maybe he's not spiritually or mentally, but physically he's still here. And that's still a nice thing to have in some form or way. So my daughter still has photos with him. My daughter's able to still hug him, even though he doesn't understand that's his grandchild, and she doesn't really understand yet that that's her grandfather.
And that will be important to her as the older she gets.
Yeah.
So you're scaling the heights of a corporate career, headed for the top, headed for the CEO spot. What company were you working for when you jumped out of the plane, and why?
Yeah. American Express I was working for. I was working for the global business travel division of American Express. And interestingly enough, it was a job I knew I wasn't going to stay in. So when I took that position, I can't divulge a huge amount here because some parts of this are still in play. But I took that position knowing I was only taking it for a couple of years. I took that position to help a very good friend out, who needed a team member they could rely on, that had stability, that had the ability to perform without being managed, and allowed that person to manage up and manage the political environment that we have in most corporates, whilst the team was still okay and nurtured and doing what they needed to do. And so put me in a position of, I need you as a friend to be able to elevate, and you're the one person I can trust to do that. And also at the same time, I'll take care of you. And I knew that was going to very much be the case. So very different to my father. The people that I ended up surrounding myself and associating myself were not the kind that, unfortunately, my father encountered in his career, life. So yeah, so I knew always going into that position that it was not a permanent position. It was a temporary position. And so when COVID hit and I had to put my team on furlough, I chose to put myself on furlough, save a lot of them, be able to really honestly say to them, I trust that this is going to pass. I trust that the company is stable enough to handle whatever is thrown at us, that I'm putting myself on furlough to ensure that you're okay and you're able to still have a purpose and show up every day at work. And that's when I jumped in and started playing with Ange and never really left.
Again, just so interested and curious and excited really to hear you use it's the same word that Ange used, play.
Yeah.
It's not, somebody who's never been an entrepreneur, had their own business would not necessarily, I mean, certainly if you're in corporate, you don't feel a sense of play when you're at work.
No.
And yet the irony is that this environment that seems really, pressured and risky and, all the stuff that goes with being your own boss and running your own company, to really experienced successful business owners have used the word play. And you're not the only people I've heard use that word. Well, why is that one of the first words that you'd use to describe going into running your own business?
So because I initially wasn't going into my own business, I was literally just coming in to help again, help Ange out. Not that she needed help, but because I saw she loves, and you know this, she loves what she does. And when she started her business, a year and a half, maybe nearly 2 years before all of this had happened, she'd come to me often and ask for advice in relation to business development or sales. And just wanted to hear what my 2 cents were in relation to what she was doing. And so I'd seen the business as a bystander and as a best friend, obviously, for a couple of years at that point in time. And I knew how much love and passion she had for what she was doing. And when I had the time ability to be able to help in any way I could, I just put my hand up and I said, how can I be of service? How can I help? At that point in time, she had implemented quite a big team. And so she was managing, and I say big team, for a new startup, right? She had 5 people at the time. And she was mentoring them and managing them and delivering and, scaling up. And I said, well, I can help with mentorship. I mentored a few people along the way. And I said, I can at least help with mentoring. I can help with a couple of the sales calls. I can do some customer service check-ins with the clients. So things that I was able to do really easily without thinking twice about. I said, this enables you to have that extra person who at this point in time you don't have to pay anything to, and, can help with the supporting of the mentorship, as well as, maybe plug some holes that you just don't have the capacity to reach all of them at this point in time, and just give you back some time. And so she obviously said yes. There's a huge amount of trust between Ange and I. And so she said yes. And that's how it all started, just really with no intention other than to serve and to help and to be of assistance.
So now that you are full-time in it, do you still have a sense of play about what you do?
Absolutely. Even more so, I think, now, because back then she was still my boss, right? Still her business. So I would have to, anything I would do, I'd run it past her, obviously, and then just check that it was okay and it was along the lines of what she wanted to build. Now we've built a business that we want to build. And therefore, it's very different. It's changed a lot over the last couple of years. And it's now I believe the essence of both of us is very strong in the business. And we come from different personalities. We're, at the end of the day, two different people. Although I think a lot of the times, I don't know if you feel that way when you're ever dealing with us, that we're two different people, but we think along the same path. We have come to a very clear understanding of where we want to take the business, but it's a journey. And I've said this a number of times. It's not the destination, it's the journey. And knowing it's the journey, knowing there's still a lot more to come, and there is a lot of change that is still going to happen over the next 20, 30, 40 years that we're in business together. It's about enjoying that and making sure we're having fun along the way, and we're learning along the way, we're growing and we're adapting. So absolutely, there's a bigger sense of play now, more so than I think before, because there's two of us. We've got each other to rely on. We've got each other to be there through the ups and the downs, and the mistakes are now divided into two, not just on one. And that allows us to have that sense of play and encourage that sense of play even with our clients, to say this isn't the destination, this is just the journey. So make sure you have fun and learn and adapt and be organic all along the way.
Is that what you mean by play? I was kind of wanting to dig into that word a little bit, because it's still a strange word to use to describe being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I think the moment you stop having fun, being an entrepreneur becomes a job. It becomes a burden. And we've seen that. We've seen people come to us that no longer love the business they're in. They no longer love the people they serve and what they do for them. And it's definitely not the kind of business we want to build. It's not the kind of thing we encourage even in business. The moment you stop loving the business you're in, how can you then really sell the services you sell truly open-heartedly and think of them in a way of, I'm trying to solve a problem for somebody? And so you can you can fall down that trap, but why would you when there is an alternative? When you can love it, you can enjoy it, you can play with it, you can see it as your playground with the world and who you serve and how you serve them.
I love that on so many levels. But I still want to know why you jumped out of the airplane without a parachute, because you didn't have to go. I mean, you knew you were only going to be at American Express for a limited amount of time, but you could have taken another corporate job. So why didn't you?
So once I started playing with Ange and saw the freedom that really being your own boss was like, not just that the decisions you make, the impact that can have on your team, on your clients, on your business, on you, was very freeing. It made me see the corporate world and the shackles that come with having a corporate job.
Had you not been really aware of those before?
No, I'd seen it the complete opposite. And so one thing I probably should mention that will make this a lot clearer is, once I started playing and having fun and doing things, I didn't just go into business with Ange. I actually went into business with a few different people.
Mm-hmm.
And I opened up, like everyone I think did in the COVID, I opened up a mask business and a PPE business and a few other bits and pieces. And I looked into my blockchain stuff that I wanted to look into, in education, which is a big passion area of mine. And so I opened up a few things, and I was single at the time. So I was on Tinder and things like that. And I remember going out on a date with someone, and I got to know someone over that period of time who I remember asked me the question. He said, wow, you're becoming a real entrepreneur, whilst we're on furlough. And my answer to him was, no. I said, my friend Marianne is an entrepreneur, Ange is an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur, but I'm not an entrepreneur. He turned around at me and he's like, yes, you are. You've opened up a PE business. You are selling to the NHS. You've been invited to a couple of podcasts on blockchain and the education revolution you want to do that aligns to blockchain and AI and all of these things. And I was really into AI even before AI was big, before ChatGPT was big, because I knew that was going to change the world. And he said, you are. And I said, no, that's not a label I'm comfortable with or happy with. And
because of your parents?
When I realized, I saw that label as a negative, as a black big problem, warning sign on myself, but not on others. And that realization of, why do I have such a problem with that word being used on me? And is that is that real or is it conceived, that I realized that I could be an entrepreneur because I wasn't going to make the same mistakes my parents did. And I wasn't the same person my parents were. And I had a different education and upbringing to my parents. And therefore, something that had happened to them wasn't necessarily something that was going to happen to me. And so the moment that switch clicked, which was a pretty, it was a simple question. Why do you have a problem with the word entrepreneur? And stopping to self-reflect and realize and accept why it was a problem for me and see that there was another side of the coin to that, everything changed. Everything changed. I looked at business differently. I looked at the way we were bringing up at that point in time. And I say we because I was obviously heavily influencing Angela's business and the decision she was making. And I remember saying in a corporate meeting, once I went back into corporate, I knew at that point in time I was never going to go back permanently. I said to them, I'm coming back with an exit plan. I'm coming back planning to leave. What time frame do you need me to exit? And I remember being told, I need you for another 9 months at least. And I said, okay, that's a problem. And I did a couple of secondment positions over that 9 months to help really elevate the team and get ready for them to have me exit. And I remember sitting in a team meeting and one of my US colleagues, I wanted to use a swear word then, but I'm going to hold it.
You can. It's an explicit podcast.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Was literally bitching and moaning about something I was trying to implement. And I remember turning to him and I said, you guys know I'm running another business outside that I started with quote COVID. And I would not accept that way of talking or thinking within my own team where I'm paying them. I'm not going to accept it from you. And they were like, it was just being so passive aggressive. It was American, so typical of this team, the American team. Just went, why do you have to be? And I called it out. I said, why do you have to be passive aggressive with me? And he's like, no, I'm not. It's frustrating to me that, you're here and you're making these decisions. And I said, I don't want to be here. I'm in this role because there's something that's not working in this team. So fix it, make it work, and I disappear. And that honest, unpolitical, answer shook him because I was right. I was in a secondment role because there was a problem with the US team. And the bosses were not happy with how they were performing or operating, culturally especially. So I just called it out. I said, I am here on your side. I carry the same email address as you. I'm not on the client side. If the client was being a problem, fair enough. They're paying for us to do something. But this time around, I'm on your side of the table and you're the one causing me problems. How is that normal? But we've normalized it in corporate. We've normalized that the only way that you come up is by whinging and complaining. And it's really interesting because I now see that pattern emerging within other people that work in corporate. I recently had a conversation with someone and I realized that what they were telling me was just their corporate culture they've come accustomed to having. Instead of dealing with the problem at hand, they complained about the problem. They came to me complaining about a particular issue they had and didn't come to me to resolve anything. Literally came to complain about something and see what I would do about it. And I realized that is such a corporate culture mentality because I now go to Ange with a problem, wanting to solve it, wanting to come up with a solution together. I come to her with a problem when I see that there's a problem, but knowing that there is a way out, knowing that there is a solution we can come to together, not just to bitch and moan. And I've realized that my family members or friends that are in the corporate world, I'm just to complain. And I find that so frustrating because I'm like, what are you getting out of that? Where does that lead to?
Yeah. Do you think you would have become an entrepreneur if you hadn't had the playground that Ange had set up to go to first?
I do think so. I think that was in my cards. I think the universe would have kept on throwing different options for me to take that as a road, as a path. I think I would have done it eventually. I don't know how, and I don't know what that would have looked like, but I think so. I think I had so many opportunities that I'd heard so many times before any of this. You'd make a great entrepreneur and why don't you start up a business and you should be in business. I've got a very commercial mindset. I mean, what I did in corporate world was commercialization. So it just makes sense to be an entrepreneur. But so I do think that would have happened because I think the universe would have just kept on slapping my face with opportunities that I, at one point in time, would have said yes to.
And you said right at the beginning, you're optimistic. Is like, what's the worst that could happen? I guess like just go for it.
Exactly.
I mean, just coming back to that mindset, where would you say, and you said about your desire, you use the word chaos, that you thrive in it, and this whole sort of problem solving, optimistic. Where would you say that's been evidenced most recently for you?
My human design apparently has that in there. So if you and my business partners, Ange loves human design, and she's read that in my human design. But I think it comes in. So most recently, I have had to spend a lot of time in Benidorm looking after my, at the time, dying godfather. I did not think that was the case when I was there. Optimistic me. So we spent a lot of time back and forth in Benidorm without necessarily a house to go to. My godfather lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. So with a child, with him on a lot of medication, it wasn't a feasible scenario for us to stay with him. So I was literally going from house to house, finding apartment to apartment to be able to just stay there, be there. And that, for most people, was very unstabilizing and very chaotic.
Sounds really stressful just hearing about it.
Yeah. Whereas for me, it was fine. It was just part of finding solutions around the fact that I needed to be there, and the fact that I wanted to be there, and that I thought it was my place to be there. And I actually managed to close more sales in Benidorm, sitting at a coffee shop, at a pizzeria, than I had being at home at that point in time. Because when I was at home, I was not okay. I was not focused. I knew I needed to be in Benidorm. I needed to be there with my godfather. And so I find that I can find stability. I can find the quiet moments in chaos. Even with being in a stressful, chaotic environment like I was at that point in time, I was very comfortable to be in that place, and very okay to be in that place, because I know it's temporary. I know it's the chaos may be happening around me, but I don't have to be necessarily in chaos for that to be the scenario.
Your internal state doesn't have to reflect your external state.
Yeah.
Or the vice versa. Your internal state creates your external state. That although it may seem chaotic and unstable to others from the outside, is how you are on the inside that actually dictates the reality for you.
Absolutely. I knew I needed to be there. I wanted to be there. And therefore, what was happening around that scenario was neither here or there for me.
So much of what we talked about this afternoon revolves around mindset. Yeah. Even going back to 7-year-old Cristina that got off the plane in Spain, just a sense of excitement. I mean, that speaks of, especially seeing it in contrast to your sister, who had a different mindset, a different view of it. What do you understand by the word mindset, and what do you do and have you done to inculcate the mindset that has evidently led to the success, in inverted commas, that you've experienced?
So interestingly enough, if you'd asked my 7-year-old self, I would have just said, well, isn't that how everyone thinks? And I was surprised by my sister's reactions, honestly. I was surprised when, I remember this so clearly. We were sitting in the lunchroom. So in lunchroom in Spain is a set meal. Everyone eats the same meal. You sit down, you get your 3 plates, and then you eat and you go out and play. And my sister was sitting there in her table with her kids of her age. Every year group sits on their own table. And she sat there and she didn't want to eat. And so they called me and they said, your sister's not eating. Can you go check on her? And I went, okay. And I remember going to sit with her and I said, what's wrong, Selena? Why don't you want to eat so we can go out and play? In my mind, I was like, let's go play. Just eat up. Let's go. And she turned to me and she said, I don't like this food. I want to go home. And I went, no, there's no one at home. And she's like, I know. And I just want to go back home. I want to go back to Australia. And for me, when she said home, I thought she meant where we lived now. And she was talking about going all the way back to Australia, and she wanted home food from Australia. She didn't want to be eating cooked chickpeas with pork meat. She's like, this is not great. And it hit me that she didn't think the same way as me. And I was so surprised she didn't think the same way as me. So I just ate and wanted to go out and play with my friends, but she was really struggling. And I remember saying to her, going, it's okay. Australia's always going to be there. I said, right now, eat and let's go play and let's go make new friends. Like, let's go and play with your friends. she just couldn't see it. She was like, I want to go back to my friends in Australia. I want to go back to eating, chicken noodles with my grandma and, and playing under a gum tree or whatever whatever her idea was of home at that point was very different to mine. She couldn't be present. She wanted to be in the past at that point in time. And she's obviously younger than me, right? She would have been 5 at that time. And I remember just holding her and going, it's okay. When we get home, I'll make you some chicken noodles and, and we'll call grandma. But now just eat what you can and let's go out and play. And that's when I realized that I had a different way of thinking to her, I don't think I really understood it, but I just knew that we were coming from very different angles to the same situation. And I think that had made me very curious as to how the mind works, how people react differently. So I always then seeked to find and discover how someone thought, how someone believed, what was their opinion around a particular viewpoint or situation, because I realized people think differently at that point in time, and therefore probably didn't link it to mindset till later on in life, but always knew that there was multiple ways of seeing a particular angle. And I was always curious as to how many ways can I see it, and what is that going to show me or teach me about that particular situation?
Then that's the key. I think that's the key. It's like, what other ways can something happens to you or you experience something, which is the same thing, I guess, rather than just accepting what comes up for you at face value. It's like, are there any other ways I've already quoted Dr. Wayne Dyer, are there any other ways to look at this? Because when you do look at it in a different way, you're able to see it in a different way. You're able to respond differently because it appears completely different.
Yeah. And I think that's why the whole thriving in the chaos scenario works for me, because chaos is happening. It does not happening to me. It's just happening. And therefore, I have to wait for a clearing potentially in that chaos to see where the opportunity actually lies.
Can that be taught?
I think so. But I think it takes maturity. It takes understanding of one's ego, experience, and time. So I don't, again, eternal optimist. I'd like to think everyone can evolve under the right nurturing, caring circumstances. The reason I think I had the way of thinking that I did is because I always felt safe and secure and protected. I always felt I had a safety net. I have a big family. My dad's one of 13 brothers. I had enough, family members to turn to that would always open the door for me and have a plate of warm food and a couch and a big hug.
But interesting that your sister's in the same environment and yet she didn't see the same thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So I think knowing that and turning that dial up, that there is a safety net, and knowing that there is, I think that's the reason that we can play or we can do things, is because we've got an ability or a safety place to play. And showing that to my sister, even telling her at times, going, it's okay, I can make you noodles, and there is a way of you having what you want. Not 100%, but to a degree, is a different way of seeing it. And once she was like, okay, I can have noodles. And I said to her, you don't have to eat this, don't worry about that. I don't want you to go hungry, but you can have noodles when we get home. And she's like, okay, I'll have noodles when we get home. So it's just that scenario is that, you might not have it right now, but you can have it, and you can have it in a way that is in a place that home is going to be. The next home that I was talking about was obviously our apartment in Spain. You need that safety net. You need that warm hug. You need that nurturing element around you. I think that's what we hear. So when we get our testimonials back from our clients, and the reason why they feel safe to play with us in our business is because we provide that safety net, nurturing environment to have conversations, to talk about the difficulties, to talk about the things that we are seeing as impossible or as difficult, and going, it's okay, I can see how you see that's difficult. How do we turn that around? That's what allows us to grow and mature. Because once you're able to get out of a situation, you can help another person get out of that situation often. And I guess seeking that someone that has gotten out of a difficult situation to learn from them. The thing of me, everyone is a teacher.
Yeah, and that's partly the inspiration behind this podcast, is people getting examples of people experiencing negative situations, but the life continues to zig and zag. I started that little bit of the conversation asking whether something could be taught, and I know teaching and education is it's just like right at the top of your list of priorities. You've already mentioned it a couple of times in this conversation. Why is it so important? What do you want to do about it?
Because it's the one legacy that we really leave behind on the world. It's the one thing that really can change the world, that as far as I can see. education, I mean, look at the impact that one teacher had on me when I was 7. I was able to catch up with the rest of the class. The choosing to be practical in my education theory when I was 15, 16, stopping, my degree and then restarting it afterwards. It's all the legacy that I really think is important. I told you that one of the big zigzags or one of the big things that happened to me is I lost a lot of money when one of my apartments in Australia flooded due to the first flood that Brisbane had experienced in 70 years. I had a beautiful waterfront property that was really waterfront at the time. that flood came through, went from being a nice waterfront to flooding waterfront. Things like that can happen. You can have $1 million home that's swept away by a mudslide, by a volcano, climate change, a war. Look at beautiful Ukraine and Kiev that's happening now. You can live in a very normal metropolitan city and it be changed overnight. But the people that walk away from that and the people that have had the chance to have a good education and learn and have the ability to then take that away with them, no war, no flood, no fire is going to take what's in your brain. It's just going to enhance it again and again and again. And that's where I believe education has that ability to constantly really enhance, really be the best investment anyone ever has on anyone else. Remember when I was mentoring the team we had at Grow Your Brand with Impact, when we had a team, and I would say to them, I could either give you a bonus at the end of this year, or I could spend hours and hours with you every week, every month, giving you access to my brain, access to what I know, being transparent and honest with you about what I've learned. And that bonus, that car you could have bought with it, that all of those things that you could have done with it will come and go. But what I'm able to give you in teaching will never go away. And you'll only build upon that and grow from that. And therefore, I'd rather invest in giving this to you than working out how do I find you a $10, $20, $100, $1,000 bonus.
So what do you want to do about education? Evidently, it's not working 100%, is it?
I think, so I've known in my mind for the last 15, 20 odd years that AI was going to revolutionize the education world. Blockchain was going to revolutionize the education world. What I believe has been holding us back in education the last 100 odd years is the institutions we've built around the educations. Those institutions are starting to crumble, and that's becoming very evident. Education itself isn't changing. Teachers themselves aren't changing. It's the education, it's the foundations, the institutions are being built on that are changing. Teachers want to teach to be able to spread their knowledge and share their knowledge. Learners are never going to stop wanting to learn, but maybe the way that we teach and we learn can absolutely change. So I believe there is a big revolution happening, and we're starting to see the glimpse of that. And, if you'd asked me 15 years ago, I would have said to you, I know AI and blockchain is going to completely decentralize institutions. I don't know how, but I know it's going to happen. I think it's becoming more and more evident how that's going to happen and how that is changing, and how the way we value potentially education and who our educators, our mentors and our teachers are and how we pay them is going to change.
I'm sure you're not wrong.
I hope so.
We spent a lovely hour and a half winding our way in and out of your non-straight line journey. We've touched on some personal things or more professional business things. One thing that we can be certain that is going forward, that your life, my life is going to continue being not a straight line, and there'll be black swans. We can look out for them, anticipate them, but we can also embrace them when they come across. But as you, at this moment in time now, as you look forward, say the next 3 years, let's pretend we're having this conversation in 3 years' time. What do you think would need to happen as you look back over the 3 years? What do you think would need to happen personally and professionally for you to be just absolutely delighted, really happy with your progress where you are now?
I'm so happy with where I'm at now. I'm so happy with where things are in the business. I would just want to continue to amplify what we're doing. I think this is something that you're amazing at. You're an amplifier. You are someone that tries to get the most out of everyone you come across, no matter, even if it is for 5 minutes that you're going to come across their lives, you're going to try and impact and change them. That's what you do, Pete. I would like to ensure that I continue to do the same. One of your guests, Maurice, was also a trainer of mine, in the sense I did his coaching program in intuition. And I discovered in that program that I my North Star is a shining light. It's bringing Earth down to the sun and making sure that is shining as bright through me and onto others as much as possible. And that can have a big ripple effect. If I can bring sunshine to myself and another person can bring up their own sunshine out of themselves and share that onto others, it's just going to have this really beautiful effect on the world. And I just want to continue making sure that I can do that, making sure that I'm able to be as physically well as I am now, as mentally well as I am now, as stable as I am now, and ensuring that that continues to have that ripple effect onto others, amplifying what I do. And I know being on this podcast with you is going to have that effect, and making sure I come across more and more people like you, that we can continue to do this and we can continue to do what you are doing, ensuring that what you are doing has actually makes its way and actually has grounds itself on earth and actually becomes a reality, not just an image in your head or a desire in your head. I think if we were able to do more of that, dream more, play more, then God, this world is going to be a much better place.
Amen. And how can the listener and I help you right now with where you are? Is there anyone that you want to be connected to? Is there anything that you're stuck with? How can we help?
That's a great question. I know you asked this to everybody. I think I would love for people just to be more open about, playing and having their ideas and bringing even their ideas to me to say, this is my idea. I don't know how I'm going to make money from it, but I'd like to make money from it so that I can play in this space and be open to having that conversation, because there's always going to lead to a beautiful conversation. That's one thing.
So the listener could do that. They could just, if they've got an idea about something, they could just send it to you.
Yes.
Well, yeah, it sounds like that would be like you'd be in your flow getting that.
Absolutely. I love those conversations. You know me, I love having those conversations. So yes, please, I'm open to that.
So how can the listener do that?
I think the easiest place to find me, and as things move or change, or we potentially change names to things, is LinkedIn. That's always going to be an easy ground at the point. It's a stable ground to reach me. And I think the other one I would say is to be open to hearing from other people as well. I really would love the listener to take moments to reflect and to open up to listen to other people and to be open to being pitched by other people. I hate it when people say to me, I don't want to be pitched. I'm like, well, how do you know you don't have a problem you want solving? So don't be so negative towards sales, because, if it doesn't have a problem you need solving, you can literally say no. Not a problem to say no. But the moment you are closed to it, you might actually miss out on an amazing opportunity.
I'm sure that the reason it keeps coming up for me in every conversation is because it's just such an important concept and idea for me, is that opportunity always comes attached to people. So if you are blocking off, whether you call it a pitch or whatever, that opportunity for someone to connect with you and communicate with you, however that is, then you're cutting yourself on from opportunity, because opportunity doesn't just drop out of the sky. It always comes attached to a human.
Absolutely. Yeah, agree.
Cristina Castro, thanks so much for allowing me to spend me and the listener to spend this hour and a half with you, going through your windy, windy journey through life. It's been a pleasure. It's been a joy.
Pleasure's all mine, Pete. Love talking to you. Always will.
I do have one question which I ask all my guests. I don't know if Ange told you about this question. Is whose non-straight line journey would you like to hear?
Yeah, you do ask this question, and I should have been more prepared for this one, because I knew you would ask it. You've met a lot of the people that I would love you to speak to, and you've already interviewed them, I've already booked them in. Simon Sinek.
Lovely. No one's mentioned him.
Really?
No.
I mean, he's a very open and honest and very sharing person, but he's not been interviewed by Pete Daly-Dickson.
Yeah. There's no but there. There's no but. He's open and caring, and he hasn't had a conversation with me. That would be amazing. Thank you for that. I just love how the bar just continues to be continually. It's great. So on behalf of the listener and I, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Not a Straight Line. If this conversation helped to reorient your internal compass or inspired you in any way, please let us know by heading to podcast.notastraightline.life/rate and leave a rating and review. Thanks, as always, to Matthew Bliss of MB Podcast Services for his exquisite engineering of this episode. If you'd like him to help you with your podcast, contact details are in the show notes. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or there's someone whose non-straight line journey you'd just love to hear, then please visit podcast.notastraightline.life/guest. Thanks for being here with me, and I'll see you next week for another amazing, deep, inspiring non-straight line journey. Love you.